Hello and welcome back to the channel on our continuing voyage to become better blues players. My name's Mark, and in this video we're going to start a short series looking at Need Your Love So Bad. What we're going to look at in this video is the chords, and I'll show you some rhythm ideas and things, and then in subsequent videos we'll look at the solos. So the way today's lesson is going to work is we're going to look at the chords. First of all, I'll show you the actual chords. Secondly, we'll then look at some different rhythm ideas that we can play over this. And then finally, we'll have a little look at the theory behind where these chords come from, because they're a little bit unusual. Okay, so let's start with the actual chords themselves. So there's basically two sections. There is what we'll call the verse, which is pretty much the whole song, apart from the bridge, which comes in at one point, and we'll look at those chords separately. So it's an 8-bar blues in the key of A. We start with an A. Okay, and then we get a bar of A7. I like this A7, although you can do this one as well. That one's nice and tense and works just as well. Then we get a bar of D. And then we get a D sharp diminished 7. Okay, that's the weird chord in this chord progression. If you think of a D7, like that, but then increase the bass note by 1 fret, you get this. Sorry. So you get that. Okay, now what that is, as I said, D sharp diminished 7. The way I'm fingering it is what's that? That's middle finger, 6th fret of the A string, ring finger, 7th fret of the D string, index finger, 5th fret of the G string, and my little finger is the 7th fret of the B string, and I'm muting the other strings, so you don't really hear those top and bottom E string. Okay, that's the weird one. That's the one I'm only going to go into it in a lot of detail. Okay, then we go back. We go back, and this time we do 2 chords to the bar. We get an A to an F sharp minor, which in some cases is played as an F sharp 7, and we'll talk about why that might be at the end of the video. Okay, but we're playing it as an F sharp minor, which is what I think it is on the record. Then we've got a B minor or a B minor 7, either of those will work. Okay, so B minor to an E7, I'm just using this one. Again, that one would also work. Okay, so in that section we've got an A, F sharp minor, B minor, E7, and then we get this little figure. Which is an A to a D9, A to an E7. I'm playing E7 like that. You can play an E9, also work, as would an E7 there. And the whole point with blues is that when we get these dominant chords, they're kind of interchangeable. You could play an E9, an E7, etc. I gave a whole video about chord theory and all the different blues chords I use. So if you haven't checked it out already, you might want to, because I go into all of those and explain all of these chords in there, what they are. Okay, so that's the verse part. 8 bars goes round and round. And then towards, I don't know, about just over halfway through the song, we get the bridge. And the bridge goes like this. It's 1 bar of D7, then 1 bar of that D sharp diminished 7 again. Then we get a bar of A, or A7 I think it is. And then we get a bar of A9. Now we could just continue playing an A7, that would also fit. Or we could play, I play the E9, the A9 like this. Okay, where respectively we are going from the A string, we're going 4th fret, 5th fret, 4th fret, 5th fret. Okay, so that works really nice as a 9 chord. Okay, then we get, we go to a B7, 2 bars, then an E7, which I like this one for this part. Do an F7 and back to an E7. And that F7 sounds really tense when you do that, when you go from the E up to the F and then back again. Okay, then it goes back to the verse chords. Okay, so that's the chord progression. So let's talk about some rhythm ideas now. Now, when you listen to the original Fleetwood Mac track, there's no rhythm guitar on the whole song. That's because I think there's an organ in there and there's a string section as well, and they kind of fill out the sound. Often when I see bands playing this, they don't have a string section and they may not have an organ. So what you tend to find is the guitar player tries to fill out some of that sound. So the most common way I see this played is doing this kind of figure here. And you can actually do that all the way through the song for all those chords. What I'm doing is literally just, I take the bottom 4 strings of the chord and I go up them, and I'm counting 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a. So you get this again. If I actually bothered to practice that and get it right. But there you go, that's what it is. And you can do that, and you can do that all the way through the whole chord progression. And that's a pretty common thing that I see played when people are playing this song. Personally, I don't play that one. That's partly because I generally always play with a keyboard player, so I don't have that much to fill out. So if you've got another guitar player or a keyboard player, there are some things that I prefer to play. So if you listen to the original record, there's quite a pronounced snare drum on beats 2 and 4 of each bar. What we can do is we can stab the chord on those 2 and 4. I'm just kind of hitting them. I'm not hitting all 6, I'm just hitting those trebly ones and hitting them and then immediately releasing tension with my left hand so that you get, well, as I say, it sounds like a stab. Okay, so if we were doing that, it would go kind of like, oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, it sounds pretty lame if we're just doing that with me counting 1, 2, 3, 4 over the top. But when you've got bass and drums and keyboards going as well, that fits really nice because that stab will jump out over the top. Clean tone or cleanish tone, quite trebly, and that works really well. Now what I'll have to often do is not play just the 2 and the 4, but what I'll do is I'll play 1, 2, 3 and 4. Okay, and on the 1 and the 3 and, I'm going to play the bass strings. So either the 1 or 2 of the low strings. So you get this kind of thing. And you can do that all the way through the chord progression. As I say, that's the way I kind of prefer to play it. It's got a bit more bounce to it and things, but it depends how much room you've got in the mix with everything else going on. So there's a couple of different rhythm ideas that you might want to try for these chords. Okay, so before we finish, let's have a little talk about where these chords come from. Because if you look at like any theory book, or if you look at the theory video that I put out with the accompanying PDF, you'll know that these chords don't all belong to one key. You won't find one key that has all of these chords in them. And that's quite important because that's why it gives it kind of that jazzy feel, because we could think of this as continually changing key, or actually probably the better way of thinking of it is we're continually borrowing chords from other keys to kind of give a change, like our center of gravity, what we feel as home. Let me explain what I mean. We start with a really nice A chord. Okay, that's just a nice pleasant A chord, and we could sit there all day. And our ear knows we're in the key of A. That's nice, everything's fine. But then as soon as we go to bar 2 and introduce that A7, listen to what happens. We start with this. Okay, that A7 chord there sounds really tense compared to this A. So as soon as we hear that A7, our ear says, oh, we're going somewhere else. Now, why is that? Well, if you've gone through my basic music theory for blues guitar players, 12 minutes video, you'll know that A7 is not in the key of A. We're actually borrowing that chord from a different key. A7 is the 5 chord. A7 only diatonically exists in one key, and that is in the key of D. In the key of D, A7 is the 5 chord. Now, our brain doesn't know the theory of that, but our ear tells us when we go from this to this, our ear tells us we're going to move. We're not staying on this chord. That A7, that's tension. We're going somewhere else. Where are we going to go? Well, that A7's been borrowed from the key of D, so our ear tells us we've got to go to D. So we start with a nice, pleasant chord of A. We add tension with the A7, and we resolve that tension with the D. And it's as if D becomes our temporary 1 chord. This is where my old guitar teacher used to use it. He used that phrase. What we're doing is we're telling the listener that D is going to become our temporary 1 chord, our temporary home. So we start with a nice chord, then we get tension, and then we resolve to the D. But we're not going to stay on that D, because after the D comes the D sharp diminished 7. And that chord's even more tense. We don't want to sit on that chord for a long time. We're telling the listener, we're telling our ear, we're going to go somewhere else, okay? So we've gone from this nice pleasant chord to this tense chord. So we resolve back to where we all began, which is the A chord. And that feels really nice and at home. And in fact, that F sharp minor chord would also feel equally at home. Because if you think of the notes in an A chord and the notes in an F sharp minor chord, they're almost identical. In fact, if you just play an A with an F sharp in the bass, you've effectively got an F sharp minor 7. Okay, so what's happened is we've gone from a pleasant chord and we're going down to the chord that's most similar to it, to another pleasant chord. Now what this second part of the chord progression is going to do is it's going to try and go right round to resolve back to this A here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go from this A to the F sharp and then try and get back to that A as neatly as possible in the most kind of pleasant way we can. And the way we do that is there's a kind of a bit of jazz theory that says the best chord to approach one chord from is from its fifth away. So if we want to get to this A chord, best chord to approach that from is from the chord that's 5 away from that, which is an E7 or here. So our chord progression is going to go from an A to an F sharp minor and then end up on that E7, because that E7 is going to tell us to come back to the A. Hope you're following this. A, F sharp minor, and then we've got to put another chord in to get to this E. And what we're going to do is we're going to approach that from 5 chords away. And 5 away from an E is a B, and in this case we'll do it as a B minor. And that's why that part resolves really nicely. And if you think about it, an F sharp minor 7 or an F sharp chord is 5 away from the B. So if you know your circle of fifths, for instance, which as guitar players we don't really need to know that, that's kind of for piano players and things. But if you go around a circle of fives, a circle of fifths, what we're doing is we're approaching each chord from the 1/5 away from it. So F sharp is the 5th of B, B is the 5th of E, E is the 5th of A. That's why when we get back to the A, it works really nicely. Also in jazz, you may have heard the theory of 2-5-1. A 2-5-1 progression is a really nice way of resolving. It's a nice complete progression. Well, 2-5-1 of A is a B minor to an E7 to an A. 2-5-1. Okay, so all of these are taking this jazz theory of saying we're going to approach one chord from the chord that's 5 away from it. Now, we can do that. Now, what I said before about borrowing chords from other keys, when we're looking at the fifth away from a B, we could actually make that F an F7, and that would really stand out as the fifth away from B. And that resolves kind of even nicer. In fact, we could, if we really wanted to, we don't in this song, but we could make that B a B7 to resolve better to the E. And that's one thing that you might find in jazz. You might find a more jazzy way of approaching this is to go A to F sharp 7 to B7 to E7. Like that. So a bit of jazz theory thrown in there at the end. You can approach any chord from the one a fifth before it, and the one that is a fifth before it, you can actually turn that into a dominant 7 chord, and that works really well. Okay, so that's the theory behind the chord progression, why those chords kind of sit so neatly together and work so well, even though when we look at them, it would appear that they don't belong in the same key. And why we start the first part with kind of nice chord, then tense, then nice chord, then tense, and then we go down this little run, which is basically going round in a circle to bring us back to where we started on the A. So it's why I think the chord progression works so well. Stick around, because next time we're going to be looking at that iconic intro solo. So if you haven't subscribed already, please do so, because that way you'll get notified when we're going to do the intro solo, and then the lesson after that we're going to conclude with the main outro solo. Hope you enjoyed this. It's one of my favourite songs. Oh, and by the way, there is a backing track, and the backing track even has the original vocals on it. See the description below for details of that. Take care. I'll see you next time.